Welcome to another episode of SaaS Showdown. This is going to be an impromptu episode where we talk about something that we were just chatting about before the show. I'm Rose Layton, and this is my friend and colleague,
Colin McCarthy. Hi there, Rose. Good to be with you again today on a
as
gorgeous
always.
Afternoon in the cloud.
So today, we are going to talk about SaaS companies that kind of suck.
Yes. Yeah. There are some that we love.
It's going to be a controversial topic.
Yes. It's going to be curious how much of this, if the lawyers, do we have any lawyers listening in the studio? Do we have any lawyers behind us
I hope not. No lawyers with me.
Who bleep and edit and redact this episode? Obviously, everything we say is our own opinionated opinion and do not represent any of the companies that we may have worked for, may currently work for, or work for in the future.
Nor do they represent the opinions of our community as a whole.
No. These are just our thoughts on some SaaS companies based on our experiences, our own personal experiences. So I think that's enough of a disclaimer where we can...
Enough disclaimers?
I think so.
Well, you want to start with Atlassian?
Yes. Yeah, because that's
with Atlassian.
That's what brought us to this.
That's what started this. Yeah.
Because let's set the scene. We both hate Atlassian.
We both hate Atlassian.
Yeah.
As users of their product.
And admins of part of their product.
And admins of their product. So notwithstanding the fairly recent, earlier this year, Atlassian had a major issue where one of their employees deleted a bunch of customer data and they were not able to restore some or all of it as part of their cloud product offering.
I didn't
Notwithstanding
hear about
that entire incident, like we could have a whole episode on like what responding to incidents like that looks like for founders because they mishandled it. I'll be totally honest with you. They mishandled it. Notwithstanding any of that, I find that the Atlassian products are, one, rather disjointed.
Yes, I think they are.
They feel like a bunch of acquisitions, which they absolutely are.
Yes. I thankfully I don't manage that much. I just manage enabling users, disabling users, and removing licenses and managing those costs. And that's what the majority of...
Have you used Jira and Jira Service Desk, basically?
Not as an end user and not as in our department. All I've been responsible for and my teams has been enabling users accessing, disabling access and making sure they got the licensing to the right part of the product, resolving any problems.
Yeah, and for my part, I've mostly interacted with Jira Service Desk, Confluence.
But you are right. It is
trifecta.
Yeah, it is a jumble of different applications, and I despise going into the admin panel because I get lost, and it's like, why is there these three different areas? You can't find the right admin setting, and then role-based permissions, like the site admins and all the other admins. It's like
there's so many of them. It's very reminds me of GCP actually, and AWS, where GCP, you can be a global administrator, but you don't have access to everything. You have to give yourself sub roles in order to access other things.
Yeah, I actually like GCP AIM. I don't fully understand it, but I like how granular it is. What I despise about Atlassian, and people can quote me on this if they wish, it's the roles that you have to give people to be able to do certain aspects of what they need to do, give them too many rights, and then they can create other site admins. And then if you turn your back on your instance for a second, all of a sudden everybody is an admin because everybody else has given everybody else admin
And
access.
on the flip side, in a well-managed environment, it can be incredibly difficult to figure out where you need permissions. So like, for instance, on my last team, we had several project boards in our project, and I was a project administrator, and I could not configure the board. And I also could not figure out how to give myself access to configure the board. So like, it was one of those things where the roles were granular. I could understand all the way to the point, like, and I mean, you and I have been doing this quite a while now.
Yeah.
Like, I could understand all the way to the point of like knowing what permissions I needed to add, but I couldn't figure out where to add those permissions. Like, where I expected them to be in the UI, they were not.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. I think you probably have a lot more practical experience of using it and managing managing it than I have. But it is terribly fragmented, and it seems their business model now, because obviously I think you could say there was sort of a monopoly in that market. Obviously there are some other options. It does seem
there is a monopoly in the market, it seems like.
Everybody we speak to has Atlassian in some sort of deployment, whether it's with everybody or just certain teams. They're using it for something, whether they're using it rightly or wrongly. Ticketing systems is a whole other conversation about people that have used Atlassian for ticketing systems. In certain aspects, it can work, but then what I find very annoying is to do anything useful and managing it how you want is an additional add-on. Was it Atlassian Access? Is
when they recently redid their AIM or IAM, so that like there was a layer above everything else. Number one, I'm not really sure what that did, but also it became like another add-on. I was like, why would you make a centralized login that you have to then pay for? Like, Atlassian's not Google, guys. Atlassian's not Microsoft. Nobody is using login with Atlassian.
I didn't even know. Is login with an Atlassian a thing?
No, I don't think so. But that's what, like, when they released the IAM product, I was like, when they released Atlassian Access, that's the first thing I thought of is like, oh, either this is like a centralized login for all of your Atlassian products, which it's not. And then the second thing I thought of was like, are they planning on doing identity and access management as the thing? And so far that hasn't come to fruition either. So like, really, I think they need to make a decision here. What is Atlassian good for? It is good for continuous delivery, engineering.
Yep. Engineers fully support them using it. Absolutely. It's the right tool for the right job.
Yeah. You can do all kinds of things, versions, user stories, bugs, like all the connections that people need to make. You can kind of like sync everything together, understand like what the status of everything is. Like, complex product teams can benefit from Atlassian. They absolutely can. I think it's very obvious that the tool was made for that. And the problem is that Atlassian has become the end all be all for everyone in every organization. And it is just not made for that. It doesn't matter how, like, the next gen version, right? The roadmaps, the plans, like Kanban boards, all of that is just way too complex for what people need. Yeah, Atlassian acquired Trello. There's still no interaction between Jira and Trello.
For a huge amount of money at the time.
Right.
Which was...
And it was a very popular product, but I think the simplicity of Trello, which is basically just sticky notes on a Kanban board, y'all.
Yes, yeah. And I was never a fan of Trello's sales practice. And they were, I think, one of the most aggressive...
they shadow IT. Super aggressive shadow IT.
aggressive shadow IT freemium model, the way that they would email companies and say,
and then they
we've
had
got
like no
X
sort of
amount of your
enterprise
data.
features, right? Like you
No,
couldn't claim your Trello accounts.
no, there's no domain capture, but they would try and charge you an enterprise license fee because it was very expensive, or cost prohibitive.
Crazy.
So
Crazy. All
anyway,
right.
SaaS
So
companies
that's the
that
spiel
we
on
do not
Atlassian.
like, yeah.
Who's
Which
next?
which other SaaS provider really grinds your gears? I think Peter from Family Guy says. Is that one of the
The
popular
next on
popular
my
memes?
list, the next one on my list is Salesforce.
So here's the thing: I've never used Salesforce.
I've
Never used it.
never used it as an admin. Well, that's not true. I did some basic licensing as an admin, but I hate how ubiquitous it is, and I have not liked anything that has been hosted on Salesforce. Like I've purchased multiple other SaaS products that are hosted on Salesforce as a backend, and I hate them.
My thinking about it,
I
my
don't want to name
only
any names on there. I'm like,
right, yeah, yeah,
I'm like
yeah.
undoing the whole foundation of your company. I'm sorry, so I won't call you out, but it's hosted on Salesforce, and Salesforce has everything these days. Like you really
Wow,
can build applications and products on Salesforce, and
that
so like, and they've
that's what
got
the commercials have
yeah.
been on television recently. I created my own app in
Oh my god.
Salesforce. There's the young lady walking around the city, so happy she's created the app to do all of the things that she needs to do, book her vacation, and she's not even a programmer, but she's but she's done it in
I mean,
Salesforce.
I guess that's probably the benefit, right? Is that instead of an actual developer, you pay an administrator for about half price who is just so embedded in the Salesforce ecosystem that, like, that's the thing. It's cheap development. Like, that's what it is. It's not any less complex. I find Salesforce administration to be incredibly complex. Uh, as have I found any product that is hosted on Salesforce to be incredibly complex to manage. Um, but those, like a Salesforce administrator makes, yeah, half of what an engineer does.
Right, right. I've, as I said, never administered it, never managed it. My only interaction has been as a consumer logging into another large SaaS provider's ticketing system to submit a support case, and that was hosted on Salesforce. A
And how do
very,
you
very
feel about that?
At the time, this was a number of years ago, and even then, the UI looked dated. It was slow and clunky, and then Salesforce went down. The SaaS provider had a glitch at the same time. Nobody could report. Nobody could report any tickets. So
That's
the
rough.
and then the SaaS provider moved to a different platform. I don't know what that platform is, but it's a lot more stable and a lot more intuitive. But for some of these things, my interaction could have been, um, you know, uh, just using an
Yeah.
older version,
I think
because a lot of
the
companies.
outage piece definitely is not typical. I
No,
actually have not known Salesforce to have a full outage in since I've been using it. Granted,
yeah,
I don't use it every second of every day, so
yeah, but obviously
um,
they are big.
they're huge.
I was recently in San Francisco. They
Mm-hmm.
have a new huge building, and San
Salesforce
Francisco
Tower.
is a Salesforce town, I would say.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say it is too. And I will say, so Salesforce is a CRM, a customer relationship manager. And I think for that, it does very well. Like we just talked about with Atlassian, right? They've gotten to the point where they're acquiring things and integrating systems that don't make any sense. Like Salesforce acquisition of Slack does not make any sense to me. I'm not sure what they're doing. Slack is an internal communication tool. Like
right,
they've added a bunch of stuff to be able to communicate externally, but like that's not what people use it for.
Yeah,
on its like very face. Like they use it as an internal like remote enablement communication tool. It's a chat tool. Why are you chatting to your customers?
Well,
you're certainly not chatting to prospective customers. You might chat with your existing customers. And I love using Slack for that purpose, to be honest with you. But
I don't know. I've just loaded up the Salesforce page to remind myself. They are like a lot of these companies. They're doing a land grab, an application grab, and grabbing everything because they want to be a Microsoft, they want to be a Google, they want to be an Oracle, they want to be an Amazon. They, almost like Atlassian has been swallowing up everybody they could. They want to be as huge as they can because if you're that big, you cannot fail. Or so sometimes
if one sector of the business doesn't work out, right, you can always plug and play.
And I can see, I'm not a big fan of Slack. It has a need in some places, but I can understand why they would buy it because it is it is a communication tool that everybody has been adopting, either through Shadow IT or corporately deployed. And yes, Salesforce is for communicating for customers and managing customers. But if you look at Freshworks or Zendesk or some of those other platform companies, they all have a chat component in them. They have a customer ticketing system. They have an internal ticketing system. They have a CRM
why buy
system.
One of the biggest independent ones?
Because
that's a lot of complexity to just add chat.
But it was the value, I think, of the company.
Yeah, I mean, Slack had incredible value.
And also sometimes it's not only the product that they buy, it's the engineering and the knowledge and access to all of the customer data, the client data, all of those
IRC chat
interactions
is a really specialized knowledge.
that is one of my complaints about Slack, that all it is
it's just
IRC with
it's
GIFs.
Very fancy. It's very fancy IRC.
And you can do GIFs, and you can do loads of emojis. So
and loads of integrations.
Yeah. I know they have a need. I recently went to the Frontiers conference in New York I think it was in June. And some of the big announcements were different types of emojis. And I thought, this isn't really a product announcement to be touting at your big conference, because
I don't know. My last organization had emojis in the tens of thousands. Tens of thousands, Colin.
Maybe I'm in the wrong generation that doesn't fully appreciate emojis. I don't know.
I didn't think, to be fair, I also didn't think we needed that many. I wanted to do like an emoji culling where I did like data analysis on the emoji usage so I could delete anything that wasn't being used. Yeah, but anyway, to be fair,
five emojis is enough. I think you can express most of the 20 things you need for in 5 emojis. It's all 20. You need. So
I don't know. I probably use 100 on at least once a year basis. So I guess I've griped about Salesforce. We both griped about Atlassian. Colin, what's another company that you think kind of sucks?
Oh dear. We might have to hit pause here while I think, or play some interlude music. Play the Jeopardy theme as a countdown. What do I?
Just a product you really hate using.
I hate using Microsoft Teams on my phone.
That's fair. That's fair.
Absolutely hate it.
On desktop, it's okay?
On desktop, it isn't too bad. because it seems to keep me signed in for longer. But I have a lot of problems on mobile being on different tenants and notifications. Like the first thing I did was turn off notifications on the phone and on the desktop because the Windows notifications were absolutely horrible. And the phone was the same. And I just found that, I don't know, maybe it's just
like horrible in what way? Just like too many of them, or they don't work properly, or
too many notifications. If you're in a busy, Teams channel with people chatting, I instantly turn them off. The problem I have is maybe it's my experience of being on Google Calendar and being invited into a Teams call. I click on my Google Calendar, it opens Teams. But then even though I'm signed into Teams, like Teams will try and load, but it won't. It will take me back to the calendar. I have to click on it again. Then it will tell me I've got to sign in when I was already signed in before. And then I've got to do MFA. And then I've got to join the call. And it's too many clicks. As opposed to Google Meet on my phone, I have a calendar, I get invited, I click join, Google Meet, instantly joins on my phone. And I'm away. So maybe it's
I don't think that happens with Zoom. If you're using the Zoom app for calls.
Zoom. Don't get me started on Zoom.
I know you don't like Zoom.
So it is.
We're just like tearing apart some big products today.
Let's set the scene. Yeah. Meeting starts at 12 o'clock. It's 11:59. It's a Google Meet. It's a Google Meet call. I have my Google Meet progressive web app. I open it up. My meeting is there. I click the link. I join the meeting. It's 11:59. I go into my calendar to join the Zoom call. I click to join the Zoom call. Zoom then opens in a browser. I then have to, if it's a new company I've never worked with before, I have to allow Chrome to open Zoom for that link. It does that. Then Zoom will slowly load. Then Zoom needs to, and I've got two screens here. Zoom will load on this
all
screen.
All of your problems are solved by the Zoom desktop app, for what it's worth.
And then, no, but I do have the Zoom desktop app.
Yeah.
But then when I start it, what does it want to do? It wants to update itself. And then it updates itself. And then it starts in this screen, but I want it on this screen. So I move it over. And then when the meeting, and then when the meeting owner starts the meeting goes back to this screen and I have to drag it back over again.
To be fair, what happens to me is if I have to join a Meet call, I will join it from my calendar, which is always on my external monitor. It'll open in a new tab in that window. And then I have to pull it out and drag it over to the other window because I always take my meetings on my laptop screen so that I'm looking at people when I'm talking to them.
Yeah. Don't open it in a tab or use the little button to then.
Well, I'm joining from my calendar though.
Right. So there is, if you're in Google Meet, this is a top tip. If you're in Google Meet in a Chrome tab, you should see a little icon that allows you to.
If I'm in Google Meet in a Chrome tab, but I'm not.
No, not.
I have 300 tabs open, Colin.
Okay. When you join that meeting, you can then click the little arrow and you can open the Google Meet call in the progressive web app, and it will seamlessly move the call from the Chrome tab into the progressive web app, and then you can move that wherever you want.
To try this next time.
Also, picture-in-picture works very well. I do like picture-in-picture on Google Meet. I've used that
I've never used
on my
it.
laptop.
So I will say some of our griping is just very like we're not. I don't. You and I aren't unusual people. I think we're not unusual examples. But we are both using. I don't use Teams, but I do use Zoom, and I have to use Google Meet.
Mm-hmm.
I do use Slack, and I have to use Google Chat.
Right.
And you use Teams. You use Slack a little bit, and you use Google.
Yeah.
So a lot of these problems come from having we have to have all of these systems, and they just don't work together.
Yes. So they don't
work very well unless you use them often.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is this SaaS sprawl where companies are having, these multiple applications, and I think that's where the user experience breaks down.
Suffers. Yeah. But on the other hand, like, so, I mean, we talked about how Salesforce, Atlassian, is trying to be a Google, a Microsoft. So, on the one hand, it's a good user experience to have monopolies, like to have major players in the field that account for most of people.
For, it certainly
On the other
benefits.
hand, it's hard to break in to that, right? It's hard to innovate. And we know that like there are things in Microsoft land, there are things in Google land that we don't like about their products, things
Yeah,
that they've just never addressed.
yeah, yeah. Well, the one thing I've always liked about the large players, or the whole market, and certainly the Google ecosystem. Google is a prime example. And this is what I really like about them. Certainly for Google Apps, Google G Suite, Google Workspace, all the names that I've known it. It was an ecosystem, and there were a lot of smaller companies out there, certainly through the marketplace, that could make a business, serving the big whale. It's like those little fishes that eat the bugs off of the whale, or the birds that pluck the flies off of the hippo. You have the Google that is the whale of the hippo, and there's this whole ecosystem around it of these smaller birds or fish that make a living and survive. And if they're big enough and or if they're good enough and innovative enough, obviously they get bought by the larger company, which for most shareholders and investors is the ultimate goal. um,
Right.
and I've always liked that. And Google were very good with their APIs and how easy it was for people to add on to their application and market stuff in the marketplace. And obviously the success of Slack is because of the openness for companies to build in add-ons, whether they're free or pay. And Microsoft, obviously people have been developing for that for forever. So yeah, it's the whole ecosystem is interesting.
It is. I would say that the ecosystem has gotten a little bit chaotic sometimes. With Slack in particular, there's hundreds of marketplace apps that are on their own, like $10-15 per user per month. And I'm like, who is paying for this?
Was isn't that what's the taco one? Doesn't that cost where you can send people tacos? Doesn't there's like ones I've been told about that cost a ridiculous amount of money? But there are
Yeah.
companies that will pay for that, I'm guessing.
Oh, I mean, presumably somebody's paying for it. I think the thing that when I think about like the ecosystem sort of thing, it's just like, I'm like, if your app is not really improving on what's already out there, don't do it. Don't do it. Go work for the better players in your field and improve on their app, right? Or do what they're doing but better. Like there's no reason to have 50 mediocre apps
Well,
that all do some version of the same thing.
there is a lot of rubbish in the marketplaces.
Yeah.
I don't know. Google a few years ago were very good at doing their sort of premier add-ons or partners. For certain things, like they chose Virtue for encryption. Um, they chose,
Mm-hmm.
who else did they choose for something else? I can't remember. I know I ended up being a customer of a number of these companies. And then there was, so it's almost like the vendor, or the vendor endorsed add-ons do
Right.
add value. But there is a lot of, just like there is a lot of malware for Windows and Mac products being out there. There's a lot of
I
rubbish
wouldn't
that gets
necessarily
published.
call them malware.
No, no, no. But
They're just,
there
I
are.
mean, yeah, they're not living up to the expectation, I think. Like people will find things to get the job done, but I think if you want to do it really well. It's not easy, y'all, to build a good SaaS app. Like, we use them all the time. And even the ones we love, there are things that we really, really wish we could change. And so, like, I don't know, if there are any SaaS founders out there listening to this, it's not easy. Don't take shortcuts. Like, do the right thing. We've talked about a lot of what the right thing means to IT, but also, like, as a SaaS user, like, you know, like build a solid product that is better than your competitors. It should be better. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Yeah. And that seems like a perfect thought
place to get
end
off
on.
the soapbox.
Yes, yeah. I'm glad that we started up here with our anger level and our stress, and we've gone right down and we're nice and calm. So yeah, this all stemmed from a discussion about our mutual dislike for some applications. And we could talk about this for another 2 hours. This could spur off into another couple of episodes about, you know, what do we look for in applications. I know we've had discussions about that in many different formats and venues. So, but always interesting. Have a discussion. So if you do have a application that you hate, to certainly put it down in the comments section below. Yeah. Write it down on a postcard and send it in to PO Box SAS01. I don't know if that will work, but
somebody's going to try and do it, Colin.
Yes.
You know where to find us.
Care of the internet. Care of the internet. And then if you do have products you love, obviously shout about them as well. So until next time, Rose, cheerio.
Until next time, Colin.
Produced by the Tab Geeks Network. Enjoy all of our shows on YouTube at youtube.com/tabgeeks. Join our exclusive, free, no sponsors allowed Slack community and sign up for our newsletter at tabgeeks.com.